So this is one way of framing the difference between borderlines and narcissists. While they appear, well, to me they appear super different, but there's some surface level characteristics that you can say are the same, like sort of um, acting with I mean, hurting others and doing things, for your own interest, I guess. That's sort of the parallel. So that's why people sometimes call borderlines narcissists, because they use the term more broadly, not in reference to the narcissistic personality disorder per se, but just this concept of being a narcissist and only caring about yourself. Um, and I guess I don't know actually if narcissists are considered borderlines. It's more that narcissist gets applied to both. So here's one way of framing the difference. Um, what a narcissist lacks is this is belief in uh their their like worldview, or like their in like what they see around them. Like a narcissist, like um they don't trust their own sort of like thoughts about things, you know, on an emotional level. Like a narcissist could, like, you know, rationally, like, they're not going to like walk off a cliff because they don't trust their fear that that will kill them. It's not like that. It's just they don't have emotional security in their beliefs, and they don't really have beliefs on that level where it actually serves them emotionally. And um, a borderline uh, can convince themselves of anything, um, within reason, but sort of with like actually outside of reason to a certain extent. Um, Not anything, but definitely some very unreasonable things. A borderline can justify those things to themselves. Um, so, uh, this is why, for an emotionally healthy person, they're going to look at a borderline and say, I would never want to be in a relationship with this person. They're gaslighting, they're manipulative, it's abusive. I mean, it's emotionally abusive, and um, could even be physically abusive, and it's, you know, this is just all detestable. And for a narcissist, what a borderline provides for them is an endless supply of perceptions, and emotional perceptions, and things that they feel that the borderline is really like, feels adamantly about these things. And it's just, what it does is it fills this gap for them. And it's all bullshit. I mean, it's all uh, a lot of, what the borderline is providing them with are lies. But it doesn't matter, because what matters to the narcissist is that they are then filled with these, you know, perceptions and ideas about themselves that the borderline gives them, which are often very negative. But they sort of scratch that itch of the nothingness that a narcissist feels. And even more generally, going throughout life, doubting themselves, the narcissist needs to have lots of people affirming things about themselves, like, it can be bad things too. That's the thing, is like, it can be good or bad. But it's important that they have people thinking about them, and people making them feel like, that they're getting these sort of responses, because without that, they don't have any of that for themselves. What a narcissist does have, though, is they are you know, they can sort of give themselves to anyone in this way. And on the emotional level, I mean, it gets slightly more complicated, but a narcissist has no problem sort of like, you see here it's going to get really muddy in what I'm describing. So what let's step off the narcissist for a second and talk about borderlines. Borderlines, what they are lacking is love. A narcissist is lacking this sort of like mental, need for affirmation, and it's sort of like a psychological gap. Um, and love as well, but for borderlines, they really really need this sort of safety and protection, and trust in someone staying there, and like it's happening more on a purely emotional level. Their minds, they're okay on that. It's more that they need to have this sort of affection, whereas the narcissist needs more attention. For the borderline, it's more affection. It's a subtle difference, but it's a difference, because they both want attention and affection, but it's in how it's sort of weighted, and what is sort of like the driving force behind this type of thing. Um, and so what the narcissist is able to provide the borderline is endless affection. I mean, eventually it turns to shit, and the narcissist cuts off, and then the borderline cuts off, and that's where it all explodes. Obviously, they're not, they're a match made in hell, not heaven. But at first, the borderline is able to sort of, draw in the narcissist, in this classic, femme fatale kind of limerence period of, the honeymoon period, etc., which is, you know, totally as, melodramatic and fantastic as it's ever written about. I mean, if not more so. To actually go through that is like it's on par with a drug experience as far as what you are receiving on the narcissist end. To have a person that you feel like completely understands you, completely gets you, like your life is somehow now in this elevated state because of this. I mean, the first time, like before you can have some mindset of like, no, this is too good to be true. It really tricks you. And what the borderline experiences during that time is, I mean, I wouldn't know because I'm not a borderline, but what they experience is someone that is, showing this intense interest in them, showing, emotional vulnerability with them, because they actually do. It's in one of the few instances that the narcissist will really show emotion. They are able to draw that from them, and this is what the borderline needs, because you see the borderline has a lot of is going to be very wary of where or he or she shows love and hate, because they're very concerned about trust. They're very concerned about, who's trying to hurt them, who's trying to love them. They operate on this very, they would call it empathetic level, and it's not empathetic in the sense of, providing others with love, but it's empathetic in the sense of, how they're experiencing, the other person, and the feelings that they're able to garner from them, and pick up on, so, a borderline has no problem, being like, fuck you, get the hell away from me, going totally cold, and that's how they respond. I mean, that's a response when they feel like they're getting abandoned. They're going to do that to you. Um, a narcissist, on the other hand, isn't like this, because they're not feeling all these emotions. They've, you know, it's not that the narcissist doesn't have emotions. It's I mean, this maybe I'll get to that later, but um, so what was I saying? Oh, so the narcissist is much they're not as discriminatory in where they give their love, so they can really consistently show lots and love and affection to the borderline. They provide them with that. Um, and I'm sure there's a lot. I mean, there's a much deeper way of explaining the borderline's attraction to the narcissist and how they're, sort of like every other man in their life, and these other ideas. And you can look at it that way with how the narcissist views the borderline too. Um, or every woman for the female narcissist, which is something I really don't know as much about. But uh, yeah, that's sort of the way that they pair with each other. I hope that sort of explains it a little bit. The one other thing, so getting off of this, showing differences for a second, I want to talk about narcissist and emotions. So narcissist, and this also just goes into like sociopaths. Um, they do have emotions, and what is the case is that they actually feel things very deeply, and they're very soft, and they are unable to function with those emotions. So what they do is they're able to uh, kind of like convince themselves out of it. Like it's just they're somehow able to train their mind in such a way that they just they don't identify with them. I mean, they really stop like feeling with them. It goes back to that belief thing too, and that's maybe where it comes from as well. I mean, so if you grow up and you have gaslighting parents as a child, you're going to defer. I mean, people have different levels of resilience, but in a lot of cases, you're going to defer to them. So you're thinking one thing, your parents are thinking another thing, and maybe you can see right in front of you that you're right and they're wrong, but for certain people, they're going to take that and they're actually going to go with what their parents say. Um, and this maybe has to do with, they're going to get punished if they disagree with them, or their parents are going to, get angry with them and stop showing them love, which is something that happens just based on an argument. And it, you know, and it can be subtle things too. I mean, with gaslighting, it can be things like, you know, are you showing that you're in pain as a kid? Like, are you showing that you're sad? And then your parents are responding to you like you're normal. And this creates the same kind of dissonance where it's like their reality, that they're projecting is fighting with yours. And, as a survival technique, you just start going with theirs. And you just get used to saying like, whatever I'm experiencing internally, whatever my thoughts are, whatever my feelings are, if I identify with those, then I'm alone. I mean, then I'm totally vulnerable, and I'm totally like, you know, because, yeah, because if it's a kid that makes that choice, they're basically choosing at that point that they are cutting off from their parents, you know? I mean, that's the consequence. It's not that they're cutting off, but it's that their parents stop showing them love. I mean, when they're being argued with, like when the kid is disagreeing with them, then they're not showing them love and affection. So you have to, you know, kind of mask all of this stuff down of your own thoughts and your own feelings in order to maintain that. So I think I kind of explained that and then maybe just made it more confusing with that last part, but hopefully you get the idea. Um, So this is just something I wanted to say because I think a lot of people they see this sociopathic behavior and they think the narcissists don't have a heart and or they have very little feelings, but it's not. It has nothing to do with how much or how little feelings you have, only that you have to hide yourselves from them because you've been taught that having them is bad. You know, I know I originally said that they feel things too strongly, but that's sort of that's the conditioning talking. It's not that we feel too strongly. It's that we are told that our emotions are a problem. So and had to kind of hide them away in order to like get through it, and that's how we learned how to live. I mean, that's how we learned how to live. Yeah. Said the same thing twice. um so yeah. Sorry, the borderline part was a little bit, I don't know. I did as best as I could. Okay. Yeah, ended here.